Welcome to Lipstick and Legacy, a podcast where your story matters and your journey has purpose. Together, we lift and inspire our communities one story at a time. Today, I have Alicia Bush with me. I recently was able to see her compete in a pageant on stage, and I got a snippet of her story, just like a 30-second snippet. And I thought she is going to be somebody to interview and to definitely watch. Welcome, Alicia.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor, truly.
You're welcome. I've been looking at some of your social media, and you sent me over a video of a song that you wrote, and I'm just really excited to share your story, your experience, in a way that can possibly help somebody else through the things that you've endured. Alicia, for somebody who doesn't know who you are, doesn't know you, who is Alicia Bush?
For me, I represent resilience and hope. At this point, it used to be strength and independence, but truly, resilience and hope is something that I really, really want to portray so that others that see me and see what I've done and see the things that I do can say, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. And just gather that hope of not giving up on yourself, not thinking you're any less, not letting anything stop you.
Beautiful. Where are you from? Tell me a little bit about the young Alicia. What did your childhood look like?
So childhood was pretty standard. Grew up in the 90s, so I got to do all the fun things without a cell phone following me around, or the evidence is what I would say. I spent my childhood years in Las Vegas, down on Washington and Jones.
Mhm.
And then around middle school, I moved out to Overton and then kind of stayed out here, graduated out here in Wappa Valley High, and then unfortunate situations happened. There's been blessings in the unfortunate situations, but I've been between here and Mexico for the past
Wow.
20 years.
So people who don't know the Las Vegas area, there's the metropolitan Las Vegas area, and then there's these kind of outlying, I don't even know if you could call them suburbs. They're like small towns that are just in the
Yeah.
middle of the desert, and we call them Overton, Moapa. There's one called Pahrump. So if you're not familiar with the landscape, so she lived probably 45 minutes from Las Vegas. That's where you did your teenage years. All right. What has really shaped you into the woman that you've become? I do want to get into your story, and maybe you can start where you want to, where you feel it's appropriate to start with your story.
What has shaped me and the woman that I have become? Honestly, a lot of things. It started with the surviving trauma, extreme trauma. It when I was 18, I was kidnapped and trafficked, and just that alone turned into survival mode.
Okay, hold on a
Unfortunately,
second. So this is where I'm going to stop. I've already stopped you. It's like 4 minutes into it. At 18, I was sex trafficked and kidnapped. Tell me a little bit about this, if you feel comfortable. Tell me what happened and how you ended up in this situation.
innocence. So
Mm.
coming from Overton, straight out of high school, I was going to go to cosmetology school, and I don't remember the school that I was signed up for, but I was signed up for a school in St. George, and I was working for Denny's, and there was a woman there, and I was slowly but surely groomed, and that innocence, because everybody is looking for that guy that's going to kidnap you, or that huge scene that all of a sudden you just get grabbed out of a car or grabbed out of a bar or drugged. That's not how it happened. I was invited to a party after she had gotten to know me for about a month. And because I knew her for a month, I'm like, oh, why not? Let's go to a party. And, as a young teen, yes, I wanted to rebel. And she's like, oh, there's going to be alcohol there. I'm going to invite you. We're going to have a good time. Well, really, what happened is I was shoved into a room and um, raped over and over again.
Did you know
And
this woman? Did she work with you, or was she a customer coming in? Like, how did that relationship develop?
she worked, and it was almost like a mothering thing where she cared and she wanted to let me let loose. And I was a quiet kid. I went through a lot of things in my childhood, and having a friend, it was like having a friend and the innocence of letting that person know too much about me and not having any guard. I was just one of those, as you've seen in the pageant, I am one of those just kind of, I'd say, an orange cat. Just throw myself in there and kind of love everybody.
But also, I think at 18 or 19 years old, why wouldn't you trust your coworker that works
Oh,
with you that you see
especially
every day?
a 40-year-old woman. I mean, out
Right.
of anybody. And she didn't look anything but like a 40-year-old woman waitress, just a standard person.
hmm Okay, so take me forward a little bit. So you go to this party. I know in your music video that you shared with me, it's very powerful. It's very heavy, but it shows beautifully in just a few minutes. Kind of, it tells your story. And so, does she grab you? Does a man grab you? Put you in this room? Like, if you're okay talking about it, if you're not, that's fine too. How did you end up in this room?
So going into the party, I was told to walk into it and the door was shut behind me. And that was the first customer. I was mortified, in shock. My innocence had been taken away from me.
Mhm.
I learned right then and there that the world is cruel sometimes. I was locked in the room when he left, and then just more people came in and in.
So this was the start of captivity.
Yes.
This was the very beginning. And so the grooming happened to build a relationship. I think this is important too. I appreciate your vulnerability here. I can only imagine how difficult it is to talk about this, but the courage that you have to talk about it may help somebody to avoid a situation or that grooming phase as well. I'm a mother of four daughters, of 10 children total, but you just worry about your kids out there all the time. So you have this woman, you've created this relationship of some sorts, you're instantly thrown into this room and into this new world that you couldn't even imagine due to your nativity, due to your innocence, and just being a young girl. How did the next few weeks, months, years progress for you? What did that look like?
So after that first event, um, I did try to leave. She told me that she would murder my family. And because we had built that relationship over a month, she knew where they were at. She knew who they were, knew their address. She'd already looked them all up. And I actually, sadly, had to call my parents and disown them. Um, she always had a weapon on the table. I had my own vehicle at the time, but she would drive it. And sometimes she'd even make me go to work so that people wouldn't look for me. It was a very strange, hard situation.
Mm,
A lot of people don't realize when somebody is under captive, it's not necessarily that they get locked in a room the whole time. Sometimes they're brought out in the public, but you don't know what's in the car behind them. You don't know what's in that woman's purse that's walking behind them. Um, what the later weeks looked like was just pure abuse, as I portray in the video, which is the easiest way to say it once and just kind of share it that way. This is a little bit harder. Uh, Finally, there was a day where I just had had enough, and I knew I was going to either die because I'm going to get murdered or I'm going to die escaping. And I chose life. I'd have
How
to say that
long was this going on for? What was the time frame?
I was, it was August, the first event, and I escaped in the winter,
So not quite a year.
not quite a year. I, I just remember it being really cold, and I was frail and naked and fit outside of some bars in a window, and I waited for her to pass out because she had a heroin addiction. I knew she had numbers of people and customers in her wallet, and I knew that I had to get far so she couldn't catch me because I already had escaped once. I was viciously tortured for it, so I didn't want to get captured again. I called the number, I escaped out the window, and I left in a vehicle with that man, a man I didn't know, a man I didn't speak the language of. And unfortunately, I married him.
How did you choose him? Was it just random or is it somebody that you knew?
It was one of the worst, yet most frequent customers. But in my head, being tortured by one person, that I at least knew what he was capable of, opposed to being tortured by many, because they didn't just ask for favors. We'll keep it G-rated. Sometimes they wanted to know what the human body could go through before it passed out. Sorry.
Okay, if you need to take a minute or if this is too much, that's fine too.
It needs to be said. That's why I started this. But yeah, he at least did not do the torturing part. He was one of the lesser offenders. And when you're that broken, I knew that he called all the time, so maybe he would pick me up and want me. So
Where this was located, was it really isolated? It sounds as though it was pretty
it was
isolated.
all in St. George. It was all in St. George, right?
Oh.
I don't know if it's the economy in still, but there was an apartment complex in Ivan's, I think she was at, and it was a low income. A lot of the time I was blindfolded in the vehicle so that I didn't know how to get to certain places. If it wasn't in her apartment complex, there was a building that I only saw the basement of. And then the Economy Inn and that hotel chain that was in that area. I actually, there is a lawsuit against the Motel 6, but unfortunately, because my issues happened back in 2006 when names and everything were not put on a computer, um, I'll advocate all day long. I will advocate all day long, but I will get nothing of it. And that's fine. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to stop another young woman from going through the same thing. But to continue on to what the life looked like, I um ended up pregnant. Uh, what I know now through therapy was just continuous at that point marital rape because he went down and we eloped and he wanted me to start his paperwork.
Mm.
He got deported in the middle of it. And when he got deported, I was held captive again by another person. At gunpoint, I escaped there and then grabbed a bus, and the only person I knew was him. So I actually ended up in Chihuahua. Uh, just a young 18-year-old woman on a bus, pregnant, scared, running for her life to a perpetrator. Um, and I immigrated him, and I am.
So I think what people need to know too is that where you're talking about, I did live in St. George for a short period of time, but in those surrounding areas, this is a town, this is a city, this isn't like out in the middle of nowhere. This is happening while people are going to the grocery store and staying on family vacations at the motel, and different things are happening around you. I've seen a lot of these stories. I watch a lot of, documentaries and listen to women's stories. And unfortunately, what you're saying isn't completely unfamiliar to that style of story. You could be living in a regular neighborhood, being held captive, and the rest of the world is just going along outside. And that's a really incredible thing for people to think about and to try to understand, which I totally get. I totally get it in some ways. The way you're telling it is very poignant, and it's definitely resonating. It is as it is with me. So what happened after
True.
you got to Mexico? Like, what's the time frame here look like?
I ended up in Mexico, and like I said, it's not that I didn't have good parents. I had good parents, and I had a standard childhood. It's what I had to do and what I had to say that hurt them so bad that they really thought that I wanted nothing to do with them. So they didn't look.
Because
But
they thought you had cut ties with them. They said, oh, we're going to go let her do her thing. Obviously, she wants no relationship with us. And you had portrayed that very well to them.
I sacrificed myself because I didn't want them to get hurt. But I ended up in Mexico, and how I got back to the States was when I was pregnant with my son. I started getting really, really sick. I wasn't being fed. I I wasn't necessarily living in the best conditions.
I can imagine.
I can say his mother was always very kind to me. I will always remember that. And being the language barrier at the time, I learned I learned Spanish in Mexico, forcefully, because you have to. I did it to survive, but it was very broken at that time. So the language barriers to be able to protect myself were
Mhm.
none. The only person that could speak for me was the one that was against me. So as they looked at it, I was just some prostitute that followed him to Mexico, and nobody knew that I really was just a missing innocent person. Uh, so when he would abuse me and hit me in front of them, because he was the only one that could speak for me, it was always validated.
Mm.
And unfortunately, because of how broken I was, I started to believe that validation. But I didn't, like I said, I started to get sick, and I didn't want to lose my son. And the family actually started to panic that I was going to die on them. And then what were they going to do if they got caught with me in their house? So they allowed me to call my parents. And my parents hopped in a vehicle, and they drove all the way down to Mexico and picked me up.
Oh.
They were still mad because of what had been said. But they had no clue. When I got back to the States, because of the abuse and because of what I now understand as Stockholm syndrome, and that is
Mhm.
something that I have to advocate. It is, I know from the outside looking in, when you say, why didn't you just leave? People don't understand what it is when you do leave. I thought in my head that there was something that I could do to fix this. Maybe I could fix him and make this a Cinderella story, and maybe he would change and we would have a great family. So for some reason in my head, I created that, and that became the story for 10 years. I
10
immigrated that
years.
man. 10 years I was married to
Wow.
him. 10 years of abuse. As you can tell, I wear my hair to one side. I will always wear my hair to that side due to the abuse. It started with um, I found out I had cancer in my cervix and uterus when I was, oh, we made it back to the States
So
in
this is during that
2012
time, that same
while I
that
was
same time.
married to
That's why
him.
you were sick? Or is the sickness from the pregnancy and just being malnourished and things like that?
So, when I say I was kidnapped and abused in that little time, I, when I say tortured, I was put in areas that are just, put it lightly. I found out that there are people in the human race that are just horrible people. But due to the scarring and due to the constant abuse, um, the scarring in my cervix and uterus created cancer. Um, Once again, due to going to therapy afterwards and everything, the Stockholm syndrome, I thought having another kid,
Fix things would make it better.
being a better wife, taking on another job, earning more money, I just was killing myself. And then I'd come home just to abuse, just constant, constant being told that I am just the prostitute that he found, and that due to the scars, due to being semi-maimed, due to having that trauma, that I would die alone if I didn't have him. So unfortunately, after years of that and only hearing that, you believe it. Um, but as I continue, uh, I ended up with cancer. Um, in one of the events, because immigration is a long process, I was moving back and forth to Mexico. I would live there, and then when he would spend all the money, I would have to come back to the States for about 2 weeks and hold down whatever job I could. I even shaved my head to sell my hair one time. I'm convinced that maybe if I earned a little bit more money, or maybe if I got his paperwork done, or maybe if I worked harder, learned how to cook, learned Spanish, if I could become this perfect woman, that I could make this picket fence thing happen. Um, when I was in Mexico, uh, one of the visits that I spent with him, he got irate. Um, I worked in a liquor store down there and I was robbed, and I wasn't stabbed hard. I have a scar on my rib. Um, I was holding my son, and my son at that time was about 2. And a man came in, and as people that steal things do, he had a buck knife that was it was like 12 inches long. And he came up behind me and he had the buck knife to my rib cage. And what saved me and my son was an old cranky drunk. And I mean, it's funny and not, you got to find humor in what it is, but that old cranky drunk who demanded his cheap wine made everybody so uncomfortable because he would not leave, even though the guy was standing behind me and he was holding me there, and I'm making all sorts of faces that I can, like help, something. And nope, that drunk old man just wanted his alcohol. And so the guy backed up a little bit so I could get the alcohol and get him out of there so he could steal the register and steal the money and steal what he wanted. And because he backed up, when the guy left, he went running so that he wouldn't get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was the first time I ever fought for myself, but it was really for my son. I took my son next door, who was a friend, and she sold shrimp and what they call mariscos next door. And I told her to hold on to it for a minute. And I went running after him like I was going to do something, or I was going to fight for myself. I didn't catch him, but he was caught down the street. And the cops caught him. And then the next weekend, I actually saw him walking free. And I started yelling at the cops, why is this man free? He stabbed me. I showed you. I went and called him in. And because my Spanish was so broken, they just assumed I was uneducated. So I looked like an uneducated drunk, and that's what my husband told them, to not worry about it. Long story short, I found out in the end he's the one that sent him there because he had a girlfriend there and they wanted to get rid of me, but I'm too stubborn to go away. But he that day in front of them beat the living hell out of me. I wouldn't stop yelling at the cops because I was mad that my son's life was almost taken over $40. And he grabbed me by the hair and he hit me so hard in the face. And his sister was there. And after he hit me in the face, I went down. And then she started kicking me in the face. And I got up and I fought and I lived. But going back to the cancer story, because I thought that I could save this crazy, I am so sad that I wasted so much life, but I do know why. But with the cancer, they allowed me to try and have a kid. Did I ever tell them that my face got beat in and it wasn't fixed and that I possibly could have had scar tissue in my head? No. So I ended up having a stroke in 2012. And the stroke was due to the scar tissue in my head. Thankfully for my age, the clot passed. It was it's been a very, very taxing weekend. So as you can tell, I do have my hair and my makeup a little covering my flaw. But when I'm tired is really the only time you
When
can
you
tell.
notice.
Yes.
So
And
how
or
many
when I'm wore
children
out.
did you have with that man, your spouse, during that 10-year span?
So I had the first one, which is my son Victor, who I'm so proud of. And 8 years later, I had Elvis. The cancer started to progress, and because of the stroke, I would have about 20 seizures a day, and my health really started to go downhill. And one thing that I have to share, when you sponsor an immigrant, you sign paperwork with the US, and that paperwork states that you cannot become any kind of debt or burden for until that person can be their own sponsor. So I could not apply for help when I lost jobs or anything, so I was kind of left without insurance. I had little spurts of insurance through jobs, and unfortunately, that is where the health issues started, but never really got fixed.
Not didn't get resolved. How was your relationship during this 10 years with your family? If you don't mind just giving a kind of a brief
Spring.
explanation about that.
So when we moved back here to Overton because it was the only place I knew of, and because I didn't want to relive my trauma, I was very, very good at smiling outside of the house.
Hmm.
I became an absolute master at covering bruises, scars, what clothes to wear, um, making excuses. And it was easy because I was a feral kid. I was definitely a tomboy. So as far as my parents knew, if I had a new bruise or anything, as a kid, I always had a new bruise. I always was jumping off stuff, trying new things. As a teenager, I continued to do that. I dirt biked, I raced, anything that
It
I
seems as though
could.
you have that free spirit about you, just in the few minutes I've seen of you. You have this very like free spirit, the soul that just wants to explore. So I could see how that would be your norm in a sense.
And it was, and that became the sad excuse.
Hmm.
My parents didn't see me for, I came back for a wedding after that event where my face was literally just demolished. Um, I still, a month later, had a lot of bruising. I still was very purple on that side. I told my parents when I came back, I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. You know how Mexico is. I went to a party and they had a metal mechanical bull and I smacked my face on it, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. And because that is something that I would have done, there was no questions asked. I dropped it there.
So you were very good at covering the behavior up of your spouse at that time. So fast forward a little bit, how did you make your way out? How did you end up leaving? What were those circumstances?
I was embarrassed. That's how I got out. It kind of started with fighting for my kids, but the fighting for my kids was more so, oh, I got to cover up what he is. They can't lose their dad. They can't know what he really is. I can't allow that to be their reality because I chose to have kids with a very bad man. Um, my um, my youngest is a product of a horrible rape experience with my spouse. I was not supposed to have relations because I had cancer and it was really bad. I actually was supposed to get a hysterectomy the day I I went in for that blood test before you go get a
Hmm.
hysterectomy just to double check,
And you were
and I
pregnant.
was pregnant. I was only 2 weeks pregnant, but I was pregnant. Because he knew that I was going through surgery, um, he made us go to a hotel so nobody would hear me so he could take advantage of me for the last time before I got everything surgically removed. Anyways, from that, I just want to make the announcement that my kids, I being that I did have to have a hysterectomy right after my son was born, if there's anything to be thankful for, I am so happy I have them. They are my world. But they were the start. It was first fighting for them, and then um, my ex did leave. He found a new family for like 3 seconds in 2016, and it was my escape route. I
Mm.
it was a weird
You saw a
experience.
window of opportunity, basically.
Yes, I saw the. I mean, he used the excuse of you're going to die anyway, so I need to find somebody else. Because like I said, at that time, I was having a lot of seizures. I still was working. There's a restaurant here in Overton called Sugars, and they were very accommodating.
I
And I
know
know
sugars. Hmm.
half the time they had no clue that there would be times I knew a seizure was coming. I had auras, and I would hide in the back room. Till they would watch over me, and I'd have a seizure and then walk right back out like nothing happened because I had to keep going. I had to feed my kids, had to make life work. Um, but
So how did you
anyway,
get away? Like, what did that window of opportunity look like for you?
it was getting divorced. So
So
I
you
knew
were
he
able,
left,
while he
and
was gone for a brief time, to find your footing? No.
no, it was very, very, very planned. When
Hmm.
I didn't tell him that I knew way ahead of time that he had found another family, but he said he had a job offer in New Mexico. I'm like, okay, you have the job offer. Oh, all right. Well, you know how I'm sick, I'm gonna die anyway. We might want to sign these divorce papers before you go. Um, I signed that if because in the end I bought the house. I'm was the only one ever with income during that time and working. I made him sign that I get the house so that he doesn't have to pay child support. And he was all excited on not having ties, not having to pay child support, not having to do all those things. And so I even, my dad, my family's so convinced that nothing was going on that my dad offered him a truck to get there. And he left. The issue is, and a year later, he made it back. Um,
What happened at that point?
I was so broken. I was so broken. He had destroyed the house so much. And as a single parent, I had no help. I was working myself to death, trying to feed two kids, trying to make things work, lying to everybody and telling everybody I didn't need help and that I was fine. And really, I still was having seizures. Yeah, I would hide it from my kids. I didn't want to lose my license or my ability to work. So I just kept going. And then when he called, because he had nowhere to go, there was a point due to certain religious beliefs that I was convinced that because I brought him here and I married him, that I needed to fix it. And because of how broken I was, I tried again. The abuse got so bad when he came back the second time that me and my kids were living in my master bedroom with one bathroom. Half the time I'd escape out the window to be able to leave. And he was living in my son's room. In order to officially escape, once again, I saw the window because he was looking at other women, but I was too afraid to try it again. In 2017, Chet Buchanan answered a phone call that changed my life. It was kind of a cool turnaround to be able to tell him at the pageant that he is the reason I'm alive.
So can you tell people who are listening to this who Chet is, who Chet Buchanan is?
He, at that time, was a radio talk show host. Amazing, amazing person. The
Hmm.
question on the field was, is cheating forgivable? He had to take me off the radio. It never hit the radio, our conversation, because I called in my messed up, traumatic head, and I fought for my ex. I told them that it's okay to cheat because I was gonna die anyway, and I was helping him to be able to live without me. And um, he pulled me off the radio and said, "We can't do this." And he said, "You need to go to therapy, and you are crazy to think that." And I fought him. I said, "How dare you say that? Not
Like, you know
everybody."
nothing about me other than this phone call, right? Like, wow.
And that day I came home to my ex starting the physical abuse with my oldest son just because he was drunk. And my son didn't want to take a picture with him. And because I saw that happen to my son, I knew then and there I was not going to let it happen to them. I knew it had to be safe because I knew leaving him would make my life a living hell.
So was this the first time that you had seen physical abuse to your children that was severe in that way?
And I knew it wouldn't be the end.
Just the beginning of a new
So
trauma, of a new broken person.
with my tax return, I bought a truck and a trailer and I moved him to St. George. I paid for his rental spot. Then I dropped him off and I drove home. Me and my kids were finally free, or so we thought. This is where a lot of women don't leave. The abuse got worse. I would come home from work and he'd be sitting in the living room. I learned that custody laws, unless you have $10,000, when you sign that divorce decree saying that he's got equal custody, and if he wants to use that against you,
You will.
he will. Little by little, I learned to fight. I learned to be resilient. But it was really for my kids. When I met, after about a year and a half of that freedom, I ran across my now best friend husband. I ghosted him. I think it was about 3 months.
Okay,
He,
I just have to say, so I don't know you, I don't know your husband. I was at this pageant just as a viewer, and I was sitting in a row next to your family and your husband. And he kept screaming, "That's my wife." And I'm like, this man loves that woman. I don't know these people, but he loves her. And it was very obvious and vocal, which I truly appreciated in that moment. So tell me how that went with, you're like leaving one horrible relationship that is kind of snowballed from this, all things horrible, right? All things traumatic, the worst things a person can ever imagine. And you meet this new guy. What does this look like?
so, I mean, he has his own story, which in the end is why we're best friends. But he ended up out here to take care of his grandmother. And like I said, his story is his to tell. But his life wasn't perfect getting out here. It was quite the road. But he was working for a place called Recon in a teardown, and I was DJing. That's one of the things that I am blessed with due to my music. I was always able to get side work and jobs and DJ and bring my systems and get that amount to pay my bills. And in the little bar out here called Wild Country, that was one of my regular spots to go DJ and do karaoke music. And it was also kind of like the after where they would all go after work. And I was always known because of that trauma. I became the most, what I would say, I don't know if you've seen Yellowstone, but the character Tater, that was my personality. I did not want to be touched. I did not want to be dealt with. I may look pretty, but don't touch me.
I get it. Yes.
The whole I went completely opposite of what I don't know how to say it, or I guess they call it the host stage where you act. But I just, because of that trauma, everybody knew me at that bar of, you can't take her home. There's you could try whatever you want to do, but that woman, she'd end up stabbing you if you tried to take her
Yeah,
home.
you
She's
had
not
boundaries,
paying.
solid boundaries. Yes.
I
Wall.
was never, ever going to be a victim again, ever. And so he tried. He was so nice. He tried. And we actually became friends first because that was their hangout and that's where I worked. And we finally started having conversations together. And I took him aside. I said, don't try. I don't want anything. I don't want any relationship. I don't want you to touch me. And I'm cursed. And I got too much trauma that don't want anybody to deal with. And he took me aside. He's like, there's something about you that I want you to know. When you're worth it, whether it's me or somebody else, you're worth it. And
Had you heard that before? Had somebody ever told you you're worth it, you're beautiful, anything like that? Was that something that you heard and believed about yourself in that moment?
no,
So it's interesting that you said that Chet played a role in your life. It's interesting, 20 years ago, he played a role in mine as well. And he's a good man. He is. And
I was
he's
honest. If it weren't for that flat out honesty,
and it was just something so small, and he just saw something and said something basically, and how it changed your life by one person saying something to you. And he did a favor for me one time that really meant, it didn't change anything, but it meant a lot to me personally. So that's incredible. So seeing you, let's fast forward a little bit. I saw you on the stage of a beauty pageant, which is probably 20 years or 30 years ago. I bet you're thinking there's no way I'd ever be on a stage of Mrs. America, Nevada. And you are really fun up there, like a good time, I could tell. But you have this story and this passion. Tell me a little bit about how your trauma and your past is impacting others. Because I know from my own story and experiences that there you have two choices, right? You can take your story and you can package it up and you can tuck it away and just let it collect dust and put it there. Or you can do the hard thing, which you're doing right now, which is talking about it. It's reliving it every time you talk about it. I see that. I hear it in your voice. It's hard. And it's hard to listen to because it's so heavy and real. But you have the other choice of taking those traumas and saying, this is what I went through. And because I went through this, you can go through whatever it is. So tell me a little bit about the impact you're having now because of these horrible things that you endured.
being that I'm finally in a spot in my life where I'm safe and speaking out, I've met strangers that have gotten a hold of me and online, which is weird, the whole online experience of being able to reach the world in such a small way. Because when you're out here in the middle of nowhere, you really feel like, well, what difference then am I really making? I'm just out here trying to advocate and speak, but who am I really reaching? And it's usually in those moments of doubt where somebody will reach out or do something. When I started the music video process, that in itself brought back trauma I hadn't even thought about for years because my story was illustrated. Due to the situation, we had to keep the people looking different because I was in the middle of a custody battle, a heinous custody battle, which finally this October, just barely after 7 years and about 20 plus grand of money I didn't have, my sons are free. But it every time I wanted to give up, someone would reach out and say thank you
Mhm.
because
Do you
of
tell your
seeing
story
me.
online? Do you have a social media presence where I did watch your video? It does tell your story. You actually are performing the vocals for your video. You have a great voice. It's very like, it's just earthy and raw. And I actually really loved your stuff. I did. I just loved it. But it does tell your story. And so are you actively like on social media? Do you have a following? What does that look like in that circle?
Not yet. So with the music video process, right after I did the video, I got really sick. I actually was in the hospital almost every other week for about a year. Um, I ended up being diagnosed with what is called Addison's disease. Very
I
connected.
know what that is,
So
adrenal.
connected, yes, adrenal insufficiency, and I no longer at all make cortisol. And that was just a beginning. Um, Honestly, I applied for the pageant right after the video because I was hoping, okay, I got this video, I have a platform, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna do this. I know I can do this. And at the time, I was doing construction. So like I had this muscular body ready to go. I had Carrie Underwood legs. Like I was
Oh, your
working for
body, just so you know, it's rocking. On stage, I was like, girl, she is lean, mean, beautiful machine. Your body was beautiful. Beautiful.
one. That's the funny thing about what people see on the outside and what really goes on the inside. And that's where I give people comfort. I said, you may see this rockin' body, but what I see is I'm 40 pounds down and I can't walk without a walker. So I, it's funny how the world can portray things
And perceive
and
you.
yes, it's honoring by all means because how a woman looks at herself and the criticism that you can give yourself is it's sad what it'll hold back. And that being part of my platform. But going back to the Addison's disease and going in the hospital, I kind of was held back in time. My video, because when you are nobody, I mean, you start out as nothing like everybody else. And even though I had played some music in fields, when you drop off the earth because you're in the hospital for about 2 years, it goes places, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, but the opportunity arose again. Um, I knew I was sick. I didn't know how sick I was when I originally applied this year. I just knew I had Addison's disease. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm on steroids. We're good. We're gonna do this. Um, I called Jackie back up and I put in my application. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And she called actually while I was in the middle of construction. I worked myself up to being a project manager in a construction field, but I didn't just project manage because of all the side work and not being able to. And this is finding the blessings in the trauma. I learned Spanish. I learned how to do anything handyman work. So I gained a job where I was project managing. I learned how to build these beautiful custom homes. And in that, they got a person that knew if the drywaller didn't show up, I'd drywall. If the painter didn't show up, I'd paint. If the finish guy didn't show up, I'd put in a door, I'd put in a doorknob. I would do all the work myself. And I know how to do it in such a way that I'm honored and excited to show portfolios and pictures of the things that I've done with my life. And that's one of the blessings from the trauma. I had to do it. I was forced to do it, but now I'm blessed and I feel blessed that I know how. Um, in that, when she called, she asked if I was ready for an interview. And I warned her, I said, I'm ready, but I'm covered in drywall right now, just to let you know I'm at work. And she said, you know what? That doesn't matter. And I said, if this pageant's going to accept me, covered in drywall and hear what I have to say and get past that, then maybe this is it. So when she called, I informed her I had a brace on. At that time, we didn't know that I had 2 other autoimmune issues and muscular dystrophy and how fast it would progress. I just knew I had a brace and possibly needed a meniscal tear fixed. So we did their interview and I accepted. And when I hung up the phone, I started to cry and I called my mom. And because we had just such a strained relationship for so long, I felt like I finally got to do a mother-daughter thing. And that her daughter, who was such a tomboy and just always covered in dirt, finally got to learn how to be a woman. So I called her up and I said, guess what, Mom? I'm going to be in the Mrs. America pageant. And she laughed. She laughed and she said, are you joking? I said, no. And then she got so excited. I knew from the get-go, I didn't exactly have the money for it. I didn't exactly know where my health was going, but something told me that I needed to do it. So I picked up and I started the process in this small town. And in a small town, it's hard to get sponsors because there's not very many people and they're all kind of working on trying to pay their own bills.
Mhm.
So the one thing I did know I could do was raffle a gun. So I went down to the hardware store and I put a gun on a credit card with hopes that I would sell enough to cover the fees and start things going. So
What a great idea. Mhm.
I asked my dad for advice, of course, because he would know what everybody wants. So I got a 22 Classic Henry.
This is great. This is the best story ever, by the way.
And so I walk into to Ace. I'm like, hey, how do you do these raffle things? I'm in the Miss America pageant. And they're like, what? And like I said, you have to remember this is a person that put up a wall so hard because of the trauma that became a teeter. I mean, I was out there. If I have barrel raced, I have raced vehicles, I mud bogged. Anything that had a free spirit, adrenaline to it, I've done it. And so walking in there and saying, you know what, this is my next thing. This is what we're doing. Uh, I was surprised. Mostly I was surprised because I didn't see myself as a competitor. I I saw myself the whole time that I was going to go into it to advocate. That was my platform. I never ever thought or imagined. And still today I get emotional, but it's good. This time these are happy tears. I never imagined I would be validated that night. Never. Going into this truly was an opportunity to stop the trauma from happening to other people. Because my music video, YouTube has new rules. So instead of every view counting, it has to be a new view. So it was really, really hard to get any views to pick up. A lot of my videos, even though that I know new people watch it, they get stuck at 1,000 or 3,000. So I never got anything monetary whatsoever out of anything that I've done. But what I have gotten is worth more. I went into the field, like I said, kind of redneck, I'll admit it, but I didn't do it in a disrespectful way. I wanted to represent that blue collar person that even though I didn't believe I was beautiful, I just wanted more women to see the field that they can, that you can. You don't have to be the cookie cutter pageant woman. You can still be beautiful. You can still rock what you got. It doesn't matter. Just
I
rock.
think too, the pageant landscape has really changed. I do know with the system that I just have competed in, It's more platform driven. I do believe that pageants kind of have this older negative view, but they are really changing and doing a lot of great work. And it is a platform to tell whatever your story is. I mean, and
Good
looking at
boy.
you, you'd never know. You'd never know. But it does give you a broader audience and opens doors to opportunities that you may have not had you not competed. And that's incredible. You also won the Miss Congeniality. And in my opinion, that is by far the most important award at a pageant. To me, it says the people watching you behind stage that are talking to you, that are dealing with you, not in interview, not when you're up there on your best behavior, watching you in your every little moment said, you were the kindest person here. And that says a lot to me about you. Tell me how that felt winning Miss Congeniality, because to me, it's the crown.
As you can see, I'm still starstruck. My whole life behind trauma, I've always volunteered. Nobody knew I was being hurt. I spent years in this small town volunteering for every event involved. I've been a part of every single minute of it for the past 20 years.
What kind of service is your favorite to offer? What kind of
I
volunteering?
love to offer, so I love offering music. I rarely charged, and that was only if I was doing karaoke in a bar, but that's different. But the 4th of July's, I am when you live in another country or you're held captive, freedom means something so strong, so strong. And anything patriotic, the Veterans Day Parade, people who
Mm,
fought for my freedom, it means so much. So if I can provide music, time, I'll serve food, anything. I'll clean up a building. I've done turtle fencing. I've just anything I can do to help somebody else. And along with that, I mean, it's weird. I feel like I'm tooting my own horn and it's not right, but that's also a thing that I learned is trauma based, but I really enjoy helping others because when I was alone, and I don't say it in a derogatory way that people wouldn't have wanted to help me. I was alone because I didn't know how to ask for help.
mhm.
So I seek people that I see not asking for help. I don't want you to have to ever ask for help. I'll just go help you. I don't want anybody to feel alone ever like I did or alone in anything. If God willing I have the time and I have the health, I'll go
You're
do
going
it.
to serve. All right, two last things before we wrap this up, which this was an incredible interview, Alicia. Before I even start wrapping it up, I just want to thank you for doing this. Your voice is so powerful. Your platform is incredible. And I know the work that you're going to do in this world is important work. And you're beautiful and you're powerful. And I was blown away by you on stage. I really was. And not because of what you said, but because of what you carried, which is different. Um, what would you tell a woman who is suffering, whether it be through abuse or health issues or just being a stay-at-home mom who feels isolated that might not be, being abused? We all have our hard thing, whatever that is. What kind of advice would you give them? Inspiration.
Celebrate your wins. Every single one of them. You deserve to be celebrated and know your worth. Even if getting out of bed that day, I have had those days. I know people look at me now knowing my story, they see, oh, this person that has been resilient. No, there's days where just putting a sock in the laundry was too much, but it was a win.
Celebrate the
Celebrate
wins.
your wins,
I love
every
that.
single one.
And I
And
can
when you
see
do
too
that,
with your story and after hearing you speak about it in a more complex and deep way, is that you really you find the goodness in those horrible moments. Well, I learned to drywall. Well, I learned to do that. Like you're finding the tender mercies and the miracles in your hardship. And that is truly, truly incredible. And it's very beautiful. My last question I ask for all of my guests to respond. What do you want your legacy to be?
My quote, when the world tells you no, get up, dust off, and scream back the hell I won't.
Beautiful. It is beautiful and it resonates with you. Alicia, thank you so much for coming on to Lipstick and Legacy. Your story is powerful and beautiful, and it is going to resonate with others. Thank you for your voice and for your
Thank you for
courage.
your kindness. It truly was an honor.
Hold on.